Hirlik, and thank you, Minister, for coming to the House. And I certainly do accept that you are genuinely trying to tackle this problem of school transport. There are major problems in it, and I know the word tweaking was mentioned. There's much more than tweaking that needs to be done to school transport. Now, I don't lay it on your shoulders, because I know exactly what happened, and I am probably one of the few people that read Mary Coughlin's review back in 2009-2010 on school transport. And reading between the lines and reading the lines on that, it was quite obvious that the assumptions were being made that households had 2 cars and they didn't need school transport anymore. And it was, how can we work school transport out of the system? And that's what they planned to do. And in the 2011 budget, they introduced the cost to try and charge people out of the system. And as you'll know, it's €100 now per household and 300 per pupil for national school, and €350 for secondary school pupils. So I'm not at all heartened by what you say today, because there are huge problems in it. I'm going to go through just a couple of them. The affordability, which I mentioned, is a huge problem for households that have to pay so much money. So by the end, I'm getting the text myself from Bus Éireann right at this moment, pay €650 by the end of July, or your child won't get a seat on the bus. It has to be paid, and it's been demanded. And many households just don't have this money because of the state that they are in trying to pay everything. In terms of the nearest school rule, you need to understand that that is splitting families first, in forcing pupils to go to different schools. Now, you might say, is that a luxury? And sometimes it's put across as being, well, it's your choice. It is not. There are, and to understand rural schools and to understand the subject choices that may be available in one school and not available in another school. So if you look at a parish, and you probably never heard of a parish called Ballycroy, you have for years and for decades, half of the parish went to the Achill schools and half of the parish went to the Belmullet schools, and that worked perfectly fine, and people had their choice. Now people are being forced to, measured from their door, they're being forced to go to either one school or another. Never mind that school may not meet the choices of the child, or the skills and the abilities that child has. So it's splitting the family, it's forcing the child into a school that may not be suitable for them, and it's splitting the parish in 2. Change to the minimum numbers, again, the change from 7 to 10 has caused huge problems as well in rural areas where you don't have the pupils. Now, I acknowledge what you said in terms of, that if it's going to be, and I welcome that if the school can show that the numbers are going to increase in the following year, that you will allow a little flexibility there. But school buses come in all sizes and shapes. And for heaven's sake, why can't we have a school bus to fit the size of the route of the parish, of pupils that it needs to pick up? Whether they be, Brandon children as being concessionary and being eligible and all of this, these are children who want to go to school to access education. Surely we can adapt the size of the buses to meet the needs of the children rather than the other way around. The concessionary pupils are left right now, as we speak, towards the end of July, in a really vulnerable situation. They're forced into a lottery system. They don't know, so they're paying in, as they did last year for a number of them, and they don't know whether they'll have a seat in the bus or not. And I know, if we look even in terms of the numbers, in terms of concessionary, the numbers that are at the moment have hugely increased since the numbers in 2011. So that really has to be looked at, and it has to be taken into account. And also the fact that the concessionary pupils are not counted when it comes to the retention of the school transport route. So it didn't matter if you had 20 concessionary students, and this whole nonsense of concessionary anyway in medical cards, well, Mr. Halligan and Minister Halligan, that the thresholds for medical cards is absolutely ridiculous, and I know that's not within your remit. But then to have school transport, judged on on these ridiculous bars is a lot of nonsense. But the inflexibility as well around it in terms of the department and how it's handled is just atrocious. You say that no service will be withdrawn, and people are welcoming that, but I noticed that you said no service will be withdrawn for eligible pupils. Again, it's not saying that a service won't be withdrawn, but it's just for eligible pupils. And, you know, we looked at this, and it was looked at in terms of reviews and value for money reviews. And I would say to you, Minister, that it's not value for money. What is being done in the school transport is not value for money at the moment. It's economic and social folly, I would say, in terms of it, in terms of putting barriers in the way of children going to school and, you know, having the inflexibility around the routes that cannot be adapted to meet the needs of the children. To me, it is not making savings, and I know the budget has been cut, but it is not making real savings if we bring that into the future in terms of the impact on rural communities and the impact on children accessing accessing education. And what I would say to you is that, and I hate to say this, but I do believe that the government are hiding behind legislation. We are legislators. It is our business to legislate, to change the system for these children. That's what we're here for. So it's not good enough to be able to say, well, I have to work within the parameters of legislation. We can change legislation for all kinds of things, many things that are not nearly as important as children being able to access education. It would cost a mere 7 million extra to provide every child with a seat on the bus. 7 million. We see today that Shell are selling out of their stake of our natural resources for 1 billion, which will go into the Canadian pension fund. For heaven's sake, what are we at? You know, 1 billion for their stake in it, and we can't find 7 million to be able to provide a seat for children on the bus. And economically, in terms of forcing parents to reduce their hours because they have to be there to pick up their children and all of that, doesn't make sense either, Minister. So, you know, I know that you're open to changing these things, and I would like that if you would come back here and you would say to us, right, these are the bits of legislation that need to be changed, and how we can work together to change them so that every child gets a seat on the bus, regardless of whether they're labelled eligible, concessionary, or any other label that might be put on them. Thank you very much.